Daniela is here. Let me make you co-host.
Let me
Daniela,
see. I'm here.
you're here.
Can you hear me?
I
Uh,
certainly can. And
How do I do this? Okay. Here we are.
okay, so first of all, Daniela, I have to say, you know, she's a wonderful person, a great educator, a
Thank you.
wonderful boss, but she is kind of suspect in her choice of employees because she hired me years ago.
I did.
Before, not now.
No, and I don't regret it. Never did. Not for a minute.
Well, thank you. And, I learned a lot from you over the years, and it's
And
great.
I from you.
Oh, thank you. And when I finished the book about the film thing, you're in the first part of it because it was
Oh,
because
really?
of you. Yeah.
Oh, good to
And,
know. Yes, I remember that conversation we had.
yep. But
Hmm.
you've been with Cambridge now for how many years you're with Cambridge?
For 12 years now. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow. It's been that long?
It's been that long. Yes.
Good. Well, let's see. You've got the co-host, so you can bring up your slides, and I really, really appreciate you doing this. And it's nice to see old friends.
It is. It's nice to see you too, and I appreciate the invitation. Let me see if my screen comes up.
Yeah, I can see him just go into. There you go. And
Okay, so
bring
let
up.
me turn my timer on.
All right, I'm going to pin
And
you.
am I on now? 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, Rob, for the invitation. I'm Daniela Meyer, as Rob has said. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you celebrating this 5th anniversary of EFLtalks. Here's my contact information in case you want to drop me a line or, start a conversation afterwards. So here I am to give you my 2 cents in 10 minutes. And I decided to call this session What I Know for Sure. And also, as I'm sure Rob told everyone that is speaking today, he said, talk about something that you're passionate about. And I was thinking and wondering, I'm passionate about education, as I'm sure we all are, all of us who are teachers and students and, all colleagues around the world. So, and you may be thinking, so you're sure about something, Daniela, in the field of education? As we know, it's very fluid, right? And the pendulum moves from one end to another end of the continuum and is always moving, and groups of students are different. So what is it that you know for sure? Not much, I must tell you. But there's one thing I know for sure, and I would like to share with you. And before I do, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my history as a teacher. I started teaching when I was 14 years old. We were living in the States, and both my brother and I were learning French as a foreign language, if English was, having to deal with English as a foreign language, because I'm a native speaker of Portuguese was not enough. And I helped him because he was flunking French. And I didn't know anything about teaching. I just taught him the way I learned, and it worked. So that means if I start counting at 14, that I have 43 years of experience. I'll let you do the math of experience in teaching. But my first official job as an English teacher of English to Brazilian speakers in a private language school, was at 17. I was already living here in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I started teaching because I could speak English well, the owner of the course said. After that, I went to university, but I majored in economics, and I had a very small minor in ELT, English language teaching, very, very short. It was just a year. And then there came a time when I was teaching at another private language school, and I was, first I was moonlighting as a teacher. I was always moonlighting as a teacher. Then I gave up my job as an economist and became a full-time teacher. And once when I was talking to my older sister, Danusa, who has a major in pedagogy, she said, so how are you doing with all your groups, all your classes? And I said, fine, but I don't think my students are learning. And she said, but how do you teach? What do you do in your classes? I said, well, I follow the teacher's books. And she went, oh, there's much more to it than that. And then she gave me a 2-hour pep talk about teaching and learning in Piaget and Vygotsky and the presentation practice production, framework, which was very much in fashion at that time. I think it was the only thing. And I went, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so what happened at that point, up to that point for me, I was focusing on the teaching, kind of like this cartoon that you see on the screen. One of the boys says, I taught Stripe, the dog, how to whistle. And then the other boy says, I don't hear him whistling. And the first boy says, I said I taught him. I didn't say he learned it. So that's exactly my situation, what I was doing up until then. I was teaching, and I didn't know if they were learning. I kind of sensed that they weren't because I talked to my sister about it. And that's how it was until then, until that 2-hour pep talk. At that point in time, I didn't know anything about classes that they should be student-centered or student agency. I had no idea what one meant by active learning. Nowadays here in Brazil, maybe for the past 2 or 3 years, people have been talking a lot, especially in K-12 schools, about metodologias ativas, which translates literally into active methodologies or active learning. I had no idea about it, any of that. I had no idea about different patterns of student-student interaction, the so-called 21st century skills of nowadays, such as critical thinking, collaboration, creativity. I didn't think of objectives or assessment. Really, I was clueless. I was teaching, right? And using the teacher's book. So that brings me to the metaphor that I have used many times now when I do teacher training. I forgot to mention that I'm currently an academic consultant with Cambridge University Press for Latin America South, mainly in Brazil. I do a lot of teacher training with teachers, teach and learn with and from teachers in Brazil. And this brings me to this metaphor of teaching, Alice and the cat. You may be familiar with that. Alice comes to a fork in a road and she asks the cat, would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? And the cat says, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to. And Alice says, I don't much care where I go to. And then the cat says, well, in that case, it doesn't matter which way you go. So that's a very good metaphor for us if we're only focused on the teaching and not thinking of objectives and things like that and the assessment that is necessary. So this brings me to this other picture, which is the relationship between teaching and learning. And you may be thinking, right, so what it is that you know for sure, Daniela? What I know for sure is that learning is more important than teaching. That is my opinion, and that is one kernel of truth that I would love for you to think about, to reflect on if you can. Learning, student learning is more important than teaching. Just recently, I heard about backward design. I'm always trying to learn with teachers, from students. And backward design, I said, that's interesting, something new. I ought to learn about that. So when I went to read about backward design, it's also called backward planning or backward mapping. It's the process that educators use to design learning experiences and instructional techniques to achieve specific learning goals. We begin with the objectives of a unit or a course, what students are to learn or be able to do, and then proceed backwards to create lessons and assessment that achieve those desired goals. So you see, this is one of the buzzwords of the moment. I thought it was like a new approach, and it is nothing like the metodologias ativas or the active learning that we have been doing in ELT since the 1980s, which means student-centered classes, students have to learn. So that's what I'm passionate about, is seeing student learning, is seeing the students feel good, have this sense of success, this sense of achievement, right? when they feel like, oh, I have learned something. We also use that SWABAT that is very famous, which means student will be able to, at the end of each class, or the can-do statements that many textbooks have, even if you're not sorry, even if you're not using textbooks, I suggest you always focus first on what you want students to learn in each unit, in each course, in each process of learning. So I would turn that picture that I showed you previously upside down, because for me, teaching is subordinate to learning. Learning, student learning is the most important issue or the most important thing of the process of teaching. And having said that, I would like to encourage you then to think about, student learning and also how you can check their learning. You need to have concrete evidence of student learning. You need to see that your students are really successful, but there's got to be concrete evidence of that. So if I can recommend something, and what I'm sure about is that we need to focus our classes on student learning. So that's it. I think my 2 minutes are up. So no, 10 minutes are up. And thank you very much for paying attention and for being here with me.
That was great. I knew there was a reason that I picked you for my boss.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be remembered and picked by you.
Well, we've talked a lot over the years, and I've learned a lot. And it's amazing how we're still able to learn, isn't it? And I never realized, I don't think we talked about it unless we did during my interview, that you came from economics too, before education. And so basically, I was business and minored in education. And
mine too. Yeah, no, I didn't remember that. If we did talk it during your interview, I didn't.
What, 43 years ago when we were kids?
Let's not start calculating these things.
No, let's not. But that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How's Cambridge doing with materials for the online?
We're fine. I mean, in spite of all of these, difficult times and the pandemic and everything, one of the positive factors of the pandemic is that the teachers had to learn about educational technology. The ones that didn't, right, that didn't like it.
Yeah.
So they had to learn real quick, and we were ready for that. We have been having and including online digital workbooks and platforms and blah, blah. So it was nice to see that, like in March and April, we were so very busy with the teachers that hadn't needed, if we could say that, or didn't want to use educational technology. So it's been okay so far.
Great. And I miss being neighbors.
I do too. I'm actually currently in Petropolis in the mountains in Rio de Janeiro at my mom's, but I haven't been to Leblon in a long time. We need to try, and when you come, let me know. I don't think I'll go to Poland that soon.
Well, you have to come visit though. Europe's a great place too.
I will. I love Europe, but maybe next year.
Yeah, well, there's always next year, as they say, right?
True. Let's hope.
Right. Danny, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
And it's
Thanks,
great.
Everybody.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.